What you are about to see is a very secret, very personal behind-the-scenes look at a former YouTuber's life. What you see on camera is often not what you see in reality. This is my reality. I quickly realized that I was in dire need of help. Over the years, I realized you guys have been there with me every step of the way, praying for me and helping me. In a weird time loop paradox, even though you haven't seen me yet, you've already been helping me. So I thank you for that. Please share these videos with your friends, click like, leave a comment. I don't know if I will be here to read your comments. At the end of the day, I don't know how much time I have. And also, please respect my privacy, because it is a life or death matter at this point. Alright, so you are probably wondering the backstory on Ryan. Here is the backstory on Ryan, his cousin, and Derek. Derek's name, of course, is his fake name. 2 years before this video series was shot, I was locked as a prisoner inside my own house for an entire week. To this day, I'm still not sure why I was locked in the house. He took away my car keys, he took away my phone, and he took away the internet. I had absolutely no way to contact anybody at the house, and it was too far for me to walk. I was trapped with my son in the house for an entire week. I had food, I had water, and Eric was home every single night. But when a person is forced to stay in a situation where they're basically treated like an animal, it makes you go a little crazy. And I went crazy by day 5. You are wondering about the backstory about Ryan, his cousin, and Derek. Derek's name, of course, has been changed. It goes back to a couple years before these videos were shot in 2017, when out of the blue, Derek decided to lock me on our property for an entire week. He took away my car keys, he took away my purse, he took away my cell phone, and he took away the internet modem. So I had absolutely no way to contact, get a hold of, or leave the house. In just 24 hours, I began to lose my mind. I realized what it's like to be an animal, to be trapped and have absolutely no say in what happens to you. At the time, I didn't know when I was going to get it back. He never gave me a timeline. He just said that I didn't deserve to have a phone, I didn't need a phone, and I didn't need to drive anywhere. If we needed groceries, that he would get them every single night on the way home. I had done absolutely nothing at this point to deserve any such treatment. I had been doing everything that I normally did. I took care of the animals on the farm. I went to the grocery store 10 minutes away to get groceries, and I came back. I took care of our son, and I made dinner. That was it. But Derek became convinced that I was going to leave him. So he stranded me on the farm for an entire week. I realized during that week that this was beyond acceptable. This was abusive behavior. And if he could trap me on the farm at that point, what else was he capable of? We weren't married. We had been dating for a couple of years at this point. And we had a son together, which was his idea. It wasn't an accident. Our family assumed it was an accident, but no, he actually wanted to have a son beforehand. And I'll get into all that a little bit later, but that was another plan of his to keep me enslaved. So I knew that I needed to get out somehow or another, but I didn't know how that was going to work. And in 2017, I was finally able to have contact with the outside world. I was also able to interview a local farmer that was a contact of Derek's. And that set off a whole chain of reactions. We'll call him the cousin. He became obsessed with me. There aren't too many girls that are into outdoor activities or farm, so he quickly became very obsessed with me. He was about the same age, and he was one of those that didn't feel like rules exactly applied to him. To make a long story short, he relentlessly pursued me, he was obsessed with me, and eventually he wore me down. I got involved with him as well. I quickly realized that he had very similar personality traits to Derek. But there was one thing that was positive out of the whole situation, and that was he gave me a window into normal people life. He brought me out to meet his family, his friends. We went different places. And even though I had to be very secretive about it all, I had the most fun out of my entire life because I actually got to experience life. It was nice meeting his family. It was nice hanging out with his friends for a little bit. They never spent much time, just little bits here and there. But it really made me realize how trapped I was in my current situation. Towards the end of things, he invited me out on a hunting trip with him and all of his buddies. I wasn't sure if I was going to go, and he wasn't quite sure if he was going to invite me. And Derek wasn't sure if he was even going to let me go. My cover story was I was filming it for a YouTube event. And it was, but it wasn't a public YouTube event. It was a private event, but I was still going up to film it anyway. Despite the chaos between myself and the cousin, and realizing that he isn't good for me either, I walked in the door of the event, and the first person I locked eyes with was Ryan. And in that exact moment of locking eyes with Ryan, I saw my entire future with him flash before my eyes. Just boom, just like that. And I've never had that before. I'm not the type of person to fall in love with someone who's attractive. I feel a person out, I look at their personality traits, and I go that route. And my first thought with Ryan was, holy cow, he is hot. Along with the whole life flashing before my eyes. And over the course of that weekend, Ryan asked me a lot of questions about myself. What type of music I liked, what type of farming I did, what I thought about YouTube, what I thought about hunting, my experience with this, my experience with that, and on and on and on. I kind of got the feeling that he might be feeling me out for himself instead of for his cousin. As it turned out, my thoughts were correct because it wasn't long before his cousin came to me and announced that he noticed that Ryan really liked me and he was not happy about it. Now, Ryan was a good guy and he wasn't about to impede on his cousin's affairs. He was best friends with his cousin, and they have a very, very strict bro code in their community. They live by their own set of rules in their Apple community. It's almost like a cult, if you will. But they live by a different set of rules. And one of the rules is you don't mess with someone else's girl, period. So that hunting weekend, I managed to take a shot on a very nice doe. And I was 100% certain that I had hit this doe because she was so close and I knew I had to hit her. So when the guys heard my gunshot go off, they all came running over, looking around. Well, you must not have hit the deer. Well, you obviously missed. You obviously missed. There's no blood. There's nothing. And I'm like, no. I know I hit her. Ryan was the only one out of the entire group of guys to actually hear my side of the story. He said, well, maybe you did hit her. Maybe she just ran off before she fell over and died. He was the only one to actually back me up and believe in me. That's huge because nobody's ever believed in me in my entire life. And as something as silly as hitting a deer, he actually saw value in my viewpoint. And that wasn't it. Everybody looked around for 10 minutes looking for any sign of my deer. They couldn't find anything. And everyone decided that they should probably just go home. Except for Ryan, who continued to walk off into the woods to look for my deer. Now, his cousin insisted that we had to go back home. And I said, well, what about Ryan? We can't just leave him in the woods by himself. To which the cousin replied, he's a big boy. He'll do fine on his own. Now, I was always raised that you don't leave a fellow hunter in the woods by themselves. Something could happen. You need to be there just in case. However, I didn't want to be left behind. I didn't know exactly the way to get back home. And if there's one thing that I absolutely hate, it's being left behind. Time after time after time, Derek has left me behind. He doesn't care where I am. He doesn't care if I'm missing. He doesn't care. So, as long as we've been together, Derek hasn't cared if I've ever gotten left behind. There are many, many instances where he's lost me in a crowd because we had a combined group of 6 kids, and it would take him an hour to notice that I was missing. And he wouldn't bother calling, and he wouldn't answer his phone when I would call. And it was just one of those repetitive things that I absolutely could not stand getting left behind, because it shows that somebody forgot about you, that you're not important enough for someone to remember, hey, where's so-and-so? So leaving Ryan behind was the ultimate offense. That was the one thing that I absolutely hated, and I didn't want anyone to do to me. So I waited and I waited and I waited, hoping that Ryan would come back. He didn't, unfortunately, and pretty soon I realized that I was going to be in trouble if I didn't try to run after his cousin, because I had no idea how to get home. And as it was, his cousin left me behind, totally not caring that I had no idea how to get home. So once again, he took after Derek. Later on, he finally arrived back at the house, never found my deer, but the very fact that I was nobody to him, and he took the time to look for my deer after everybody else gave up on me, it really, really meant a lot to me. Sassy, quit humping my sofa. Now, if that was the only instance, I probably might not have been so intrigued by him, but there were more. Later that night, we went out to a bar, and since I wasn't quite sure if I was a date or not, I had no idea what I was. I didn't know if he was paying for my food, and I didn't have a whole lot of money because it had cost me a lot of money just to drive up there. And I wasn't really big into YouTube yet. I think I had just gotten monetized, so I had no budget at all. And Derek, of course, never gave me any money. I was pretty much at the mercy of any child support that I might get from my first marriage. So when we went out to dinner that night, the cousin didn't offer to buy me anything at all. He didn't buy me any drinks. He didn't buy me anything. So I ordered a small appetizer because that's all I could afford. He never looked at me and said, "What do you want?" or anything like that. And to make matters worse, he had invited a girl along to dinner and spent the entire evening ignoring me, talking to her instead. Now, this girl was married and he was good friends with her, but she also made the point in saying, "Oh, you buy me drinks every time we go out. It's only fair that I should buy you a drink tonight." And I thought, he never offered to buy me a drink tonight, and I only came up there because he insisted I should come. But yeah, he hasn't bought one thing for me. So I was a little heated on that one, but kept my mouth shut. Meanwhile, Ryan at the other end of the table noticed my tiny little plate, and he had ordered an entire pizza. And he passed it down towards my end of the table and told everybody to help themselves. Me being me, of course, I turned him down, didn't want to eat his pizza. That was his dinner. So we later on went to a different bar. This was a karaoke bar that we went to. And everybody piled in at this big long table. There was nobody else there except for our group. And some of the guys had invited up some random girls they had met online. Apparently, they do that. And just people to hang out with. Ryan, meanwhile, sat at the bar with one of the other guys. But later on, his buddy moved to our table, and Ryan stayed at the bar. Now, of course, everybody was drinking, except for me. I never actually started drinking until the age of 30 because my first husband was an alcoholic. So I was very cautious about how much I would drink. Knowing how drunk these guys were going to get and how cold it was, I decided to be a wise decision to be the DD. So I decided not to have any drinks at the karaoke bar. Meanwhile, everybody else was slamming them back. Ryan was still at the bar, and I kept sneaking looks over at him, and he just seemed to be sitting there alone with his thoughts, which I thought was kind of sad. Still, the cousin never offered to buy me any drinks whatsoever. And it wasn't too long. It was probably maybe about half an hour before we left. All of a sudden, a full round of shots appeared at the table. And everybody was asking, who ordered the shots? Who ordered the shots? Nobody admitted to ordering the shot. So they assumed that some good-doing person who had arrived sooner that day had ordered shots for the next group, and they put him back. As we're getting ready to go, my shot was still sitting there on the table, because again, I was the designated driver. Ryan finally gets down from the bar and walks over, and he notices my shot on the table. He said, "Oh, you didn't take your shot." He knew it was mine. And I was slightly embarrassed. I said, "Well, no, I'm the designated driver, so I just want to keep things clear and free." And he seemed kind of disappointed about it. Meanwhile, one of the other guys grabbed it and shoved it back. But it occurred to me that very likely he had been noticing what his cousin wasn't doing and was trying to make up for it discreetly on his end. Because nobody else asked about me not taking the shot. It just sat there on the table. Nobody noticed, nobody cared, except for Ryan. Later that night, we go back to sitting around the big kitchen table. There's a big kitchen island with bar stools around it that have been pulled up to it. Once again, his cousin sat down, and I was left to stand. Funny enough, Derek does the same thing to me. Now, Ryan, who had also been sitting down, noticed that I was left standing. He jumped up and pulled out his stool and said, "Hey, sit here. Go ahead and have a seat." To which I said, No, I'm fine. I had a long drive up here anyway. I can stand. It's okay." 3 times he offered me his seat. Again, the only one out of the group that gave a care about it. So, the end of the weekend, he insisted on giving me a hug before he left, which I thought was a little strange because I was shaking everybody's hand. I'm not a big huggy person unless it's a girl. I'll hug all the girls, but the guys, I'm a little more formal with the handshaking thing. And Ryan insisted that he had to give me a hug. So that was fine. I thought it was a little strange, but so be it. And that was the last that I talked to him. But when I went home that weekend, I began thinking back on everything that had happened, and I realized all those little tiny details that I had really missed over the weekend. I had been watching him, just keeping tabs on him. I had no idea who he was other than the cousin. And the more I watched him, the more impressed I was. There wasn't a single thing that turned me off about him. Meanwhile, his cousin was just really displaying all the same qualities that Derek had, and I just knew that that was the end of that. But as time went on, I thought the memory of Ryan would fade. It didn't. It got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I realized the more I looked at what happened that weekend, that Ryan was exactly the type of guy that I should be dating. And something about that first initial locking of the eyes with him, where I just had our future together flash before my eyes. It was like nothing I'd ever had before. I would even go as far as to say love at first sight, but I don't know if that's true because I don't know what happened in his heart. So the more I prayed about it and prayed for God to take his memory away from my mind, the stronger it became. And month after month after month, I begged God to take his memory away because I didn't want to think about somebody that wasn't going to be a possibility. Meanwhile, I was still trying to do my best with Derek and praying that Derek would be the man that he was supposed to be the father that he was supposed to be. And he wasn't. But that is how the story of Ryan got started. And Ryan and his cousin were at better odds with each other over me, because his cousin never really let go of pursuing me. Even after that weekend, even after he got mad at me because I turned him down for doing extracurricular activities, even after he stopped in randomly to my house on several occasions, and through the years would still contact me to see if I could go hang out with him. And Ryan always knew that too. And that is the love quadrangle of me, myself, and the three other guys.